All right, welcome back to the Multifaceted Athlete. It's been like 3 months at this point, but we're back with an exciting episode because Erin, who has been on the podcast, ran her first 100-miler, and Audrey was there to pace her. And I'm also friends with these two, and they're both my athletes, so I know them pretty well. But Erin, do a quick intro for the listeners, and then Audrey will do your quick intro before we dive into the Oregon Cascades 100.
Okay. Well, I'm Erin. I've been working with Kayleigh since, January or February 2021. Kind of started running around that time. And then just got really, really hooked on ultras. So when I'm not running, I'm a nurse. And then when I'm not at work, I'm running. That's pretty much it.
You're selling yourself short. You do a lot of other things too, but those are the basics of your life.
I do backcountry ski and things like that as well. But yeah.
Yeah. And Audrey.
Hey, I'm Audrey. I've also been working with Kayleigh since 2021. I think August was when we started working together. At that time, I was doing mostly road races. But since becoming part of the community, I've fallen in love with trails and now kind of swing back and forth between trails and roads. And because Erin and I were in the crew at around the same time, we've spent years in the same Slack channel and kind of became friends. And eventually, years later, actually met at her first 100-miler, which is great.
Yeah, I know. I was so excited when, Erin, you reached out to our Slack group looking for pacers and crew, because that's kind of what we wanted it to be for. Yeah. But Erin, so what drew you to the 100-mile distance? Because getting to ultras is one thing. People usually start at 50K, which you did. And then you slowly progressed. And then you were like, I want to do 100. So what drew you to the 100? Because that's quite a different beast than a 50K or a 50-mile.
Yeah, I feel like there were a few things that kind of drew me to it initially. Before my first 50, I said, I will never run 100. And my friend said, just give it a couple weeks and you will. And I said no. But then I ran my first 50 and moved into my condo the following week and was able to move furniture and felt pretty good. And the end of my first 50, I wanted to keep going. I felt good. The flowers were beautiful. It was nice weather. I'm like, I just want to run for longer. So that kind of sparked the idea in my head. And then my friend Rob, who was my final pacer, made a comment to me. It must have been that same year that if I ever ran a 100-miler, he would like to pace me for it. And so then that kind of pushed me over the edge of how cool would that be? He has paced at Western a few times. And in my brain, it's just this amazing running legend because he's 70 years old and still kicking butt on trails. And so that kind of set in stone, okay, I'm going to go run 100 and he's going to pace me and this is going to be great.
That's awesome. And it kind of puts a time limit because obviously he's not getting any younger. I mean, obviously he's still kicking ass, but I'm assuming there's a limit to his pacing duties.
Yeah. And there was definitely that pressure of okay, well, he said if I ever do it, but I should probably do it in the next 5 years. And I also don't think I would have been motivated for much longer. I felt while that itch was there, I needed to go.
Gotta ride the momentum of the 50.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah. And how did you pick Oregon Cascades 100? What went into your considerations for which one to choose?
I also blame Rob for a lot of that, to be honest, because I think him and I exchanged emails back and forth for 6 months about different races. So I knew I didn't want a ton of elevation for the first, maybe the last one, just because there's already the challenge of the distance. And so I kind of wanted around 100 feet per mile for elevation gain. So I looked at Javelina. He had sent me Tahoe, which I was like, that's hilarious. Absolutely not. For people that don't know, that race is insane. There's a ton of elevation and you're at high altitude. So I live at sea level. I didn't want high altitude. And so initially I wanted to do Canyonlands 100. And then this year they didn't hold that race because they didn't have enough volunteers last year. So I kind of fell back onto Oregon Cascades. I wanted not a ton of elevation. I wanted something that had shorter pacing sections, knowing that Rob probably wouldn't want to pace for 20 plus miles, which Javelina, you do 20-mile loops and your pacer is with you for 20 miles. And that's a really big ask of people. So Oregon Cascades, there were different sections of like 26, 11, and then 14 miles. So more reasonable asks of people.
And it's slightly closer to you, which cuts down on some of the travel logistics you would have had with Javelina or Canyonlands and having to either drive quite far or fly and figure out, which is kind of what Audrey had to deal with being crew and pacer, flying and figuring out how to carry everything. Or I know you two worked out a system of how Audrey could get her fuel out there without having to carry everything. But yeah, Audrey, switching to you for a minute. When Erin reached out to our crew and was looking for pacers, what made you want to fly across the country to help her?
Well, my first reaction was like, oh my God, a 100. That's so cool. I'm so excited for her. And, I listen to a lot of ultra related podcasts, and I just consume a lot of content around ultras. And so it seemed like a really cool opportunity to like see what those race formats are like firsthand, in a place that's far away. Yeah. So for the listeners, I live in New Jersey. So I am nowhere near Oregon. I'm nowhere near like trail running hotspots in the country. East Coast has, it has some races, but there's nothing like those West Coast trails. So it just seemed like a cool opportunity to support Erin, who, again, I never had met, but had, we'd support each other through the Slack community. And so it seemed like a really cool way to get involved in her experience while also like seeing a 100 miler on the West Coast and being in Oregon. I've never been to Oregon before. So it just seemed like a really cool adventure. So it was a little bit impulsive, but I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's go for it.
Yeah. And I always think that if you can crew or pace someone at 100, it's like such a great experience, especially because you don't have to run 100, but you get to soak up the atmosphere and like just be there for someone else and be part of their journey, which is really cool, especially like depending on the race. And Oregon Cascades, I've heard, is really a really good race.
Yeah, I've heard so many good things about Bend and like the trail community that they have out there. So I kind of wanted to see that firsthand.
I know poor Audrey had to pace overnight too, so she didn't get the views.
We had a sunrise view.
Oh, that's true. Somebody asked me about the views this morning, and I was like, yeah, I remember sunset, but I don't remember sunrise.
It was a metaphorically dark period.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to say like it was a dark time, but like it wasn't because the sun was rising. It was both.
Erin told me a little bit in our like post race call about that time in the race, which we'll dive into, but it seemed like a struggle mentally for her at that point.
Yeah.
And physically with breathing, which we'll also get into. But Audrey, we'll stay on you for a second. How did you feel going into the race weekend, having to fly out there, being around new people, and also crewing and pacing someone for the first time in a distance that long?
I don't know. There were a lot of new things all at once, so I just kind of jumped in.
Yeah.
Erin's mom was like the crew chief, and she was amazing, so welcoming. So I immediately felt comfortable. I felt at home. We had a great setup. Erin did a lot of great planning with a van and like meticulously organized gear. So she definitely made it easy to come in as somebody who had never crewed anything before, really. But I mostly just came in being really excited. I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew that like whatever happened, it was going to be fun, and we were going to figure it out and make it work.
Yeah. That's all ultra running is at the end of the day, really.
Problem solving.
Yeah.
You don't know how anything is going to go.
No, especially once you get up to distances like that. And Erin, how did you feel as the runner going in? Because I know you felt a little bit apprehensive with the training we had you doing and like wondering if it was enough. So how did you feel?
Yeah, it was honestly a whirlwind like the month leading up to the 100, because I did my second to last big back-to-back run with one of my other pacers, Kayleigh. We did I think she did 18 miles with me, and then I finished out at 26 by myself. And so I felt really good that weekend. And then the next week I started my new job and immediately got COVID. And I had never had it before. My mom's like, don't worry, it'll be fine. You'll be sick for 2 days and you'll be good. And I was sick for like 8 days. And then, so I missed my last long back-to-backs, which made me pretty nervous. And then the week prior, I did a 13-mile run where I felt like I was dying. And like, this is not a good sign for next week. So Kelly and I talked about it a lot, and it was just like rest, drank a lot of fluids, hope for the best. Like I did the training that I could do, and hopefully at that point, like I was trained up enough where I'd be fine going in. And so it was a lot of just like, okay, focus on sleeping, recovering. Like you've done all the training up until this point. And this is the first year of running where I have not had some injury that's knocked me out for a while. And so it was by far my best training year. And I did twice the mileage that I did for my 50 miler. So I was like, okay, I'll probably be fine. But COVID definitely made me nervous because I was not 100% at the start line. So I think that was kind of the biggest fear going in, was like, okay, I'm still recovering from getting sick. My longest run was 26 miles. This was 3-4 times that. But then I also feel like I had the stress of like, my mom needs to sleep. She can't drive the van all night. She's going to be so stressed out about me and how I'm doing that she's not going to rest. And I definitely had thoughts of like, oh my God, what if they get in a car accident because they're both so tired, or they're all so tired that like nobody can safely drive? And what if like I have to drop for some reason and all these people flew here to support me and then they don't even get to run because I had to drop? And so I almost feel like I spent more time stressing about how other people's experience was going to be versus my own, which probably helped me be relaxed at the starting line for myself, but definitely stressed about other people.
Yeah, so. I feel like that's common as the runner too, because, well, I feel like knowing you, you're also like a caretaker. So it's like you want everyone to be taken care of. And then obviously once you're on the course, you have no control. And everyone is there for you, and it can be kind of like, I don't know if you two feel this way. It can feel weird being like the sole reason people are doing something and like that center of attention kind of thing, and like embracing that selfishness and being like, yeah, this is all about me for these however long this takes me to do, you know? But I think that's a really good thing for runners, especially in like 100-mile. I say ultras because like, I don't know if you want to go into it, Erin, but we did have a back and forth about someone who might have been involved in your race that we ultimately decided should not be involved because they would not prioritize you at the end of the day. And like, that's what you need in your crew and pacers. They need to understand like, this is your race. And like, if you want to drop, if you decide to drop for the reasons that you're okay with dropping, then like they need to be cool with it. It's not about their training. It's not about, you know, their vacation kind of thing. So they need to be on board with you running the show.
Yeah, it's hard because like you said, I am not that person that's like, give me all the attention and take care of me. And at a certain point, like I feel like throughout the race, I don't think I ever, and Audrey might have a different opinion, but I don't feel like I ever acted that way either. Like I knew what I needed at the aid stations and I was like, hey, get me this, please. But I also was just so excited to see everybody. And it wasn't until after the fact that I was like, okay, now take care of me because now I'm broken. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, that was when I really was like, okay, I need my mommy. Like, I'm done.
Yeah. It is so interesting. Like you guys kind of both touched on like two seemingly opposite things that both go into running 100, like selfishness and vulnerability, like both happening at the exact same time. Like you have to be selfish in being able to ask for exactly what you need. and kind of centering yourself. But I think centering yourself is also really like, it makes you really vulnerable because it is uncomfortable to have like all of these people there for you. I don't know, the two of those things both occurring at the same time maybe is like a uniquely long distance ultra phenomenon.
Yeah. I think the other piece on top of that is I had friends that they had live tracking for the race, and I had friends at home watching and actually like stayed up tracking most of the night. And I'm thankful that I didn't know the extent to which they were tracking when I was running, because I feel like that would have added pressure, but I knew that there would be people checking in. And so I feel like I also had that pressure of like, okay, don't let my friends down that aren't even here. Because they all know I'm doing this. And so like we're gonna do this.
Yeah. I haven't really heard anyone talk about that kind of pressure, because when I ran my 50, that was kind of similar because they had the live tracking, which was the first race I've ever had tracking for. And when I did drop, I got so many texts like immediately. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize so many people were following this.
Yeah, I had my phone in airplane mode. And so when I took
Yeah.
it out of airplane mode when we got home, all of a sudden I got like a gazillion texts from a bunch of friends saying, "You're doing great. Keep it up. Like your pace is amazing." I'm like, that had to be like the first 50 miles of the race. But I also feel like I had flashbacks to the only other race I did that was tracked. Kayleigh knows this and Audrey knows this, was a backcountry ski race in March where I had to drop like 2 miles into a 50K ski race because my asthma was out of control. And so I had to call my dad and ask him to come pick me up like less than an hour after he had dropped me off. And he watched the live tracking and was like, weird, they're not moving. And so I feel like it was flashbacks to that of like, people are watching, they see when you stop, and then you have to go hand in the tracker, and it just really sucks. So
Yeah.
I don't want that again.
Yeah. And unbeknownst to you, your tracker did go haywire at one point. And I'm sure, I mean, Audrey knows because I texted her and I was like, what is going on? Right. Erin's in a car. What is happening? Obviously, your dad texted too, the crew, and was like, what happened to her? So I'm sure a lot of your friends freaked out at that moment.
They did. I was going like 30 miles an hour off course.
You were. Yeah, it really looked like they were just carting you off the course, or like you were in the van with your mom.
Yeah, I was not. Just left the aid station.
Yeah. So, note to listeners, the trackers are not always accurate, which I'm sure if you've ever tracked someone in a race, you've probably seen at least one person's tracker go in and out, or look like they're doing something weird that they're not actually doing. But I guess let's dive into the race now. So we talked about beforehand how you all were feeling. Erin, what do you remember from the first half of the race when you couldn't see pacers? And then we'll talk about what Audrey was doing while you were running, cruising along.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, the first couple miles were on the road, so everybody was pretty bunched together for that. So I had some fun chats with people. There were a lot of people running the race with like friends or family, which was kind of cool. And then we got to the trail section and I talked to this girl. It was both of our first hundreds. And then at that time I was thinking like, maybe it would be fun to run a 200 if this goes well. And so she was planning to sign up for the lottery, so her Bigfoot for next year. And she was like, yeah, like, if we get along, if we're friends after this race, you should sign up too. And we'll see if we get in. But you only have 2 days after this race to make that decision. And then the lottery closes. I was like, okay, cool. And during that time, I also met a guy that had run Bigfoot 200 2 weeks prior and then was running Oregon Cascades, which like now that I've had the experience myself, I'm like, that is just
That's wild.
Another level. That's crazy.
Built different.
Truly.
There's no way. No way my body would let me do that. But yeah, so I chatted with a bunch of different people. And then what was really weird to me was in my 50K or all the 50Ks I've done and the 50 miler, like I pretty much was always running with somebody Like it was very rare to be totally by myself. And if I was, it wasn't for very long. But in the 100, the first 50 miles, I probably ran 20 plus miles completely by myself. So every time I came into the aid stations that had crew, which I think before 50 miles, there were 3. But I would like start tearing up a little bit, partially because it was so special to have people that will come out and be so selfless and just take care of you and support you. But then the other part of that, I feel like later on was because I was just kind of lonely on the trails. So it's like my people. So that was really nice. But yeah, it's a lot of time in your own head by yourself, just on the trails, trying to keep yourself moving. But I did feel pretty good for the first 50. And I talked to my mom about this just the other day. She's like, yeah, you were smiling like every time we saw you for the first 50 miles. You still looked great. After that, not so much. But the first 50 miles, you looked great. And I did feel really good for the most part. I would say probably like 10 or 15 miles in. I was like, well, I'm kind of tired. Like I can definitely feel I'm not 100%, but that's okay. And I told Audrey about a dream that I had before the race where I dropped at 30 miles because I was like, I'm tired. I think I'm just going to stop. And everybody was like, yeah, okay. And then in my dream, I found out that I was 40 minutes ahead of the cutoff and could have taken a nap and continued on. And I got so mad. So when I hit 30 miles and kept going, I was like, all right, we're over that. We're not dropping. We're going to do this.
That reminds me of something I wanted to ask you as part of your prep is you had a great document that, like Audrey said, organization on point. And part of it was you made a list of like, these are the reasons you're allowed to let me drop. So your race dream just made me think of that. What were your reasons that you were allowed to drop? And I guess, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about like what you prepped your crew for how to handle race days? I almost said day, but it took 30 hours.
Yeah. Looking back at my reasons to drop, they were ridiculous.
I don't think so.
But well, I feel like I probably should have included like severe asthma somewhere in there, but it's fine.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
We might have been able to look past the list.
Right. Yeah. So I really I had a lot of talks with my mom before the race specifically because I was like, you're going to see me in pain. You're going to see me uncomfortable. You need to let go of like the whole mom caring piece of you. And I joked, I was like, you need to be more like dad because he's the guy that's like, take an Advil, take some goo, keep moving. Let's go. Toughen up. So my acceptable drop reasons were uncontrolled bleeding requiring a tourniquet, a broken leg, or rhabdo. And then I kind of added to that. I was like, somebody needs like proof that I'm peeing blood and in that severe of rhabdo, like it can't be mild. So all very extreme.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you don't want to drop under any circumstances unless like you're forced to drop.
Right. Yeah. You need to be like, I need to go to the hospital and that's why I'm dropping.
Yeah. And for the listeners, you mentioned like the severe asthma you could have added, but up until this race and running races that aren't at altitude, that really hasn't been an issue. So like not thinking of it beforehand is not out of the question, you know? If it was like you were coming to Colorado and running one, Leadville maybe, then we probably would have been like, yeah, let's add asthma to the list because we know from your experience, where was that, Buena Vista area? No,
I feel like I blocked it on Crested Butte. Yeah.
Crested Butte. That's where you had to drop from the ski race. So we know like altitude makes your asthma flare and cold air. So that would have been like more top of mind, I think. Anyway, I think your list was great and it's a great exercise for any runner to do. Like, what are reasons that my crew can let me drop? Because I'm sure we'll get to it Well, yeah, no, in your pacing section, there was a
we
conversation where you wanted to drop and Audrey was like, no.
Yeah, no, sorry. Suck it up, eat it, boo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had that on I had like a whole Google Doc that I shared with everybody. So that was on there. I had like the breakdown of the different aid stations and the anticipated time of arrival, which Kayleigh also had on a spreadsheet for us. The cutoff, like any specific things that I wanted at that aid station versus other ones. So like, when did I want my ramen noodles? When did I need my headlight? Audrey came up with the fun idea of having glow sticks. So when did I want to pick those up from my crew? And then one thing that I kind of didn't think would come into play, but ended up coming into play around like mile 70 was I included like 3 songs that, oh gosh, what was the title of that section? It was like 3 songs to bring me out of the darkness, I think. Yeah. And so my pacers had actually downloaded them on their Spotify or on their phone, so that if I like needed a boost, they had them ready to go. And so Kayleigh did actually at one point, she's like, do you need one of the songs? I was like, I think I do. So for anyone thinking of having pacers for a race, like share your pump up songs, because that definitely was helpful to have. And then I think I had like a checklist for myself of what I put in my backpack, because I had like a pretty big backpack that had all of the stuff I need at each aid station. So it had like a jacket, a long sleeve shirt, blister tape, CBD lotion, which was fantastic.
Yeah, your backpack was so organized, and what was really helpful, the day before the race, we all sat down around the backpack, and Erin like unzipped every pocket and was like, all right, in the main compartment we have clothes, we have puffy jacket, and then like in the side pocket there's inhaler, there's like extra socks, there's gloves, and like in top container pocket there's like all the medical stuff. So it was so organized. So it was really clutch. So in those moments where like you were able to text us or Kayleigh texted us about something that you needed, like we knew exactly which pocket to go into to get it. So that was super helpful.
Yeah, I did divide it up. So like the top pocket was things I wanted at every aid station, and it was like toothbrush and baby wipes. And then like the inner pocket was the first aid kit. So I tried to make it super simple.
Yeah, an organization like that really helps, especially like we were saying before, you have no control once you're on course. So it makes your crew's life easier, and then you'll get what you need because they already know where everything is. And just like thinking about those things before you're in the situation is really helpful, because running 100 miles, well, running any long distance is really exhausting mentally and physically, and your brain just doesn't quite work the same the later you get into the race.
Yeah. I was actually really surprised. Like even towards the end, usually I was running in the front and I never got lost.
That is impressive.
Yeah. And I also still like at the end of the race was like, okay, this is what I need. This is like the fuel that I want. This isn't working. Let's get rid of that. And so I still felt like I had my like thinking abilities, which was nice, because I know that that's not the case for everyone. And I'm sure we'll get into it that I was hallucinating, but my brain still was working ish.
Yeah. So then leading up to when you could pick up your first pacer, Audrey, what was the crew up to? What was your day like?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the first aid station where crew was accessible wasn't until mile 30.
Something like that.
So there was a lot of time that passed between when Erin actually started the race and when we got to convene. So, you know, Erin was up before dawn getting ready, but meanwhile, like the rest of us, we were sleeping in, we made eggs, we had coffee. I think we got in the van and rolled out, I think at like 10 o'clock. And so we got to the first aid station, and we kind of like, you know, we got there with enough time to kind of set up our little camp. We had folding chairs. We kind of had everything ready. We were doing our best to track Erin and see when she was coming in. And we were like stunned because Erin, you rolled in, you were all smiles. You were so hyped up. And we were like, oh yeah, just like one marathon down. This is going great.
Yeah, crew life seemed pretty chill until overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, especially because like you were saying before, Erin, like the first half, and for anyone listening, like I tried to estimate when Erin would come into aid stations, and like the first half I was pretty confident about because she's run 50 miles before. So we've had that data. And like you said, you ran 26 miles in training. So like I know your paces, but then after that point I was like, who knows? These are our estimates. But it's really hard to know like what's going to happen to you after that point. And then for crew just being like, got to be there early enough so you don't miss her. And then you just have to adjust on the fly and like recalculate when she'll be at the next aid station. So yeah, definitely gets
Audrey
harder.
kept that spreadsheet up to date.
She did.
That was great. My mom was like, yeah, you're the tech one. You can do that piece of it.
No, it was great. Like all the formulas were already configured in there. So it was just updating like the actual time of arrival at the aid station versus the estimated. And Kayleigh's Excel magic would populate all the other ETAs.
Yeah, the spreadsheet is clutch for the long races.
It was great. And it was very accurate. I think, Erin, you came in like within 10, it's like 15 within minutes.
Yeah. For the first half.
Yeah.
You ran very consistently with how you had been in training.
Yeah.
And with previous races. So then when you could pick up your first pacer was Kayleigh, how was that section? That was the 26-mile section, right?
Yeah. So some background on Kayleigh. She had never run a marathon before. We met during a half marathon back in July. And she is just a phenomenal climber. Like her uphill running skills are insane, mostly because she has a backcountry ski background and wildland fire. So she's just a beast.
Whoa.
Yeah. So her and I had talked about running the enchantments during that half marathon. And the next week we ran the enchantments together, which is a 18-mile loop with like 6,000 feet of gain. And then, like I said earlier, she did one more training run with me. So I was like, she's ready. Like, I don't even care that her longest run is like 20 miles because I know she can do 6 more and she's like very strong. And so we took off, and that's when the tracking got super crazy. But we were on track the whole time. She also loves taking pictures. So that section is very well documented, which is great because there were only 4 race photos that the professional photographers took that entire race. So, but we had a really beautiful sunset. And then I think we got up to like just over 7,000 feet at one point. The sun had gone down. It was getting chillier. And that's kind of when the asthma issues started. And so Kayleigh also has a background as an EMT, and she was like, hey, it's probably time. You should probably take your inhaler. I can tell you're struggling. I was like, all right, fine. Because I like to push my lungs and just tell them they're fine, which for asthmatics, that doesn't work. So it was good to have her there to kind of be like, no, like you need to take your inhaler. So we had a really long uphill section, and then people kept saying the downhill is technical. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like Pacific Northwest trails are like dirt paths. Most of them have no rocks or roots, and they're so smooth. Having grown up on the East Coast, like it is butter out here. That downhill is technical. So we could not run a lot of it. Plus it's dark. So I had a really good light, which was nice. But yeah, between it being dark and I was pretty tired, I also had to pee like every single mile during that section. So I was super well hydrated, but it was like half a mile in, I'd be like, oh my God, I have to pee again. I was like, I'm just going to make it a mile and then I can go. And it was so annoying.
I believe it.
And then that is also the section where I started hallucinating. So my first set of headphones had died. probably like, I don't know. That was a 26-mile section. I think probably like 8 to 10 miles before the next aid station with crew. And at one point I was like, "Ooh, we must be close to an aid station. I hear like some pump up music." And Kayleigh was like, "There's no music, Erin." I was like, "What? There's totally music." She's like, "There's not music." And that happened twice during that section, but it was like fun jams in my head, so that was cool.
A helpful hallucination. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Better than seeing something, I think.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Your brain's just trying to pump you up.
Mm-hmm. It really was. And then I don't remember. I think it was just like, it was dark. I was tired. I wasn't running as much as I wanted to run. And also, like, as Audrey and I learned later, like the aid stations were not always where they said they were. And so there was a point with Kayleigh where I was like, man, I am struggling. And that's when she whipped out the songs to drag me out of the darkness. So we listened to one of, I think it was Carrie Underwood's Champion is the one that she played. And then these two guys were running with a speaker, and we ended up running with them for a little bit into the aid station, the next one. So yeah. That was also a section where I kind of started getting sick of like mango and Twizzlers and stuff. I just didn't want like solid sugary food anymore. So at one point I had dropped a Twizzler and I was like, oops, oh well, my bad. And then a little bit later on, I like threw a piece of mango into the woods. It's like, she'll never notice. I'm not eating this. Because I had a food timer set for every half hour, but there were definitely times where I was like, I am just so sick of sugar. I don't want to eat this, but I know she's going to yell at me. So I'm just going to like pull a toddler move and throw it into the woods.
We were wondering when the toddler would show up. What mile?
I only did that twice.
No, but that was a thing like we had talked about. Like, I feel like that is I don't know if it's like a running joke, but people sometimes like might descend into toddler behavior into the later miles of an ultra.
Oh yeah.
When it's like you have to convince somebody to eat or to like keep moving. There's a lot of no, I don't wanna and working around that.
There really is, yeah.
I think even the day before when we were going out for our little shakeout, I was like, "Hey Erin, so like how do you want me to navigate if you just say no to food at mile 75?"
Yeah. Which Audrey did a fantastic job with, because I was like, I don't really want to eat. And she's like, just drink half of your bottle of Tailwind and we'll count it. I was like, thank you. Okay. Compromise.
Compromise.
Yeah, you kind of do have to do those little compromises with your runner as the pacer. Yeah. But you're like, you have to fuel. And they're like, no. You're like, please.
Just a sip. Just a little sip.
Yeah. One sip and take another sip. 30 seconds later, please. Yeah. Were the aid stations farther than you were expecting or closer? I'm guessing farther.
Oh, God.
Or just like at a different mileage?
Yeah. So on the website, the race was 98 miles, I think. And then Cal Topo said it was like 96 and a half. And then it ended up being 100 and a half. And it was a section with Audrey where the aid station was like 3 miles past where it supposedly was supposed to be. And I think both of us were getting pretty annoyed. We're like, it should be here. Like, where the heck is this? Like,
I think we started looking for it like about 4 miles in to our little stretch. I was like, okay, where is it?
Yeah.
Mile 5 like passes, mile 6 passes, mile 7 passes.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Because you two, you crossed through one aid station before the one where you switched to Rob, right? In your stretch? Yeah, that's one thing that I feel like I've seen in so many different races, especially making the spreadsheets. It's like, do I go off of what the website says or do I go off of Cal Topo, which is like supposedly the GPS map, or what? Because they, especially in the longer races, they don't usually match. So that's something good to note for the listeners. If you see a discrepancy, just keep in mind it could be not where you think it is. But so then rolling into the aid station where you picked up Audrey, what time was that? That was like
3
early
a.m.
morning. Yeah. Right? think
That
it
was
around
when I
3
drank my
a.m.
Red Bull.
That was smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, Audrey,
that-
what did your like night leading up to that look like? Did you sleep at all?
Yeah, we did sleep actually. So we didn't actually go back to the Airbnb at all between the aid station where we set Kayleigh off with Erin. So I think that was around mile 50. We drove into Bend. We had some dinner. I had to run into an REI to get a puffy jacket because it was so much colder than I packed for. So emergency puffy. And then we just drove out to that aid station super, super early. We parked and then just slept for however long we could.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just like van snoozing.
Yeah.
Had an alarm set. We were ready to go. And so then I think about an hour before we were expecting Erin to come in, we brought out our camp chairs. We had some hot coffee. We were all bundled. We got our glow sticks on. We were ready to go.
Did anyone else have glow sticks, or was it only your crew?
I don't think anyone else did.
Not that
That's
I saw.
Such a good idea, especially for just knowing where to find everyone.
I also feel like I had probably the brightest light. So if anyone runs at night, Kogala lights, they're like, it's like daylight.
Those things are intense.
Yeah.
So bright.
Yeah, I've heard good things from you, mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then how was your section together? I guess, Erin, from your point of view, what was that section like? Because that was, you two ran for what, 14 miles together?
Was it? I think it was
14-ish.
Oh man, it was supposed to be 11 and a half, but yeah. I came into that aid station pretty rough. Like asthma had definitely fully kicked in at that point. Like you could hear me wheezing just like sitting at the aid station. I was like uncontrollably shaking, even though I had put on my puffy and was wrapped in blankets. Like it was ugly. And that was the aid station where I was like, my mom's probably freaking out right now. Which she told me later she was not. She's like, I knew you had good pacers that would take care of you. I'm like, okay, well, I was freaking out about my condition, but glad you weren't. And so Audrey and I started out pretty slow. And I was in front, which I think was good just because then she didn't lose me.
You lit the way.
Yeah, that too. But we had some sections that we could kind of jog a little bit. And then like we talked about getting to that aid station just seemed like it was forever because it was way later than it was supposed to be. And we kept saying like, oh, we'll be there before sunrise. Like we'll definitely be there before sunrise. And we were not. And when we did get to that aid station, there was a woman sitting. They had fires at a lot of the aid stations, especially overnight. And there was a woman sitting there that ended up having to drop because she couldn't keep anything down. And I was like, oh man, that really sucks. But like, I'm glad that I'm still doing semi okay at this point. Yeah. And then I think it was mile like 82, 83 probably, where I had like my first and only real like breakdown of the race, where I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm going to drop at the next aid station. My asthma is too bad. I'm having trouble breathing. Like, I can't even take my inhaler right now. I'm done. And kind of like the short of it was Audrey said, yeah, no, that's cute, but keep moving. But said it in a much nicer way. She said something along the lines of like, I know you're struggling. I get it, but like, we'll talk about it at the next aid station. We're not going to talk about dropping right now. Slow down, just keep moving. She said you only have 5 3-mile runs left and you can run 3 miles and we have time to slow down. So like, just take your time. We'll move whatever pace you need to move, but we're going to keep going.
Yeah. I saw the panic and I knew at that point that it was really cold and it had been a really rough stretch of like waiting for the aid station. And I think that kind of like frustration I don't know how much that added to like what else was going on physically, but like, I don't know. All I knew is that you turned to me and you're like, I don't know if I can do 18 more miles of this. And I was like, we don't have to talk about that now. Like, we're in this mile. Let's focus on where we are now. It's going to get warmer. The sun's going to come up. Breathing is going to feel better soon. Like, just make it to the next mile. You've got lots of time before the cutoff. And we don't have to decide anything right now. Maybe you'll feel better next mile.
Yeah. No, Audrey
did tailwind.
Audrey did such a good job because I was in tears at that point. And up until then, like, I had really bad left elbow pain at one point. That was the breakdown with Kayleigh. Was my elbow was really hurting.
Your elbow.
Yeah, I think I have like tennis elbow that I've had for like since I had shoulder surgery. This elbow has not been okay. I should probably get that checked out.
That's like, but it's not what I expected you to say was bothering you.
Yeah, no, it had never been an issue until like, I don't know, 60 some odd miles in. I went to like put my Pop-Tart up to my mouth and I literally couldn't bend my elbow far enough to eat my Pop-Tart with my left hand. And so that was like my mild like discomfort with Kayleigh. But then, yeah, Audrey got the majority of my struggle.
I was trying so hard to be the positive force. I was like, look, you can see the Sisters mountain. It's so pretty. Look at the alpenglow. Don't think about your lungs. You can do it.
She was great. And we reminisced about Yuong's world.
Oh, yeah. Just like the weird little earworms from Flash animations from the 90s.
The end of the world video.
The end of the world video is a classic.
Yeah, that came up a few times over the weekend.
Is it the llama song? Was that the other
llama song? The badger.
Oh yeah,
badger song.
Yeah, we just started reciting things from our youth. It was pretty great.
That's a great way to pass time, honestly.
Yeah, no thoughts, just things that are still lodged in the back of your brain in the archives.
Yeah. That makes sense for your section, though, because I feel like, one, you're really late in the race. Two, like, overnight is so hard. Not speaking from experience, obviously I haven't done it, but I've seen people do it, and it just, like, wears down on you, especially not being able to see anything. But I will say, I'm going to brag about Audrey for a second. She's one of the best people I've seen with, like, mental strategies. So if you want anyone in your corner while you're, like, I can't fathom 18 miles, it's Audrey, because like, I see what you do in training with like chunking and segmenting for your long runs. So yeah, you were a great resource at a time when Erin needed you the most.
You just gotta trick yourself.
You really do. Just be like, break it down as small as you need it to be in order for you to keep going, whether it's, by mile, like you were saying, and focusing on the mile you're in, or like once it's not dark, like get to that tree in front of you, and then we'll think about another tree once we pass that one, and just keep doing that until
I feel like
you get where you're going.
Like brains are always looking for something to worry about or something to freak out about.
Yeah.
And it's trying to help, in its own way.
Yeah. Trying to make sure you don't die running 100 miles.
Yeah, it's just looking out for the rest of you. But but not very helpful in an ultra setting.
No.
Yeah.
Was there anything else were you hallucinating during that section?
Weirdly enough, no. Not that I remember.
Yeah, I thought you were very cogent during our section.
Yeah. Although Audrey took a really cool picture where like the lights are all zigzaggy. She's like, what it feels like at mile like 80 or something in an ultra. And I was like, my brain did kind of feel like that.
No, it looks like something out of like a nightmare. But it's just like, because I took it of Erin running in front of me, like, and you could see some of like the moonlight and the headlights, but like because she was moving, it like came out all like kind of swirly, so it looked like some weird like Slender Man kind of.
God,
I don't know. It was weird. I thought it was cool, and then when I posted it, my friend was like, "That looks like a nightmare."
Okay, well, to me, it looked like a fun rave in the middle of the night.
Yeah. See.
So. Yeah, that's fair.
I agree. I think it looks cool. It's very surreal.
Yeah. And I mean, you were on the West Coast, not in like Appalachia, so
Right.
those freaky things are not present there, to my knowledge.
No, we just have
like
the Yeti.
skinwalkers and everything. Oh yeah, you do have a Yeti. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway. Okay, so then when did you pick up Rob? Was that 86?
86. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And
Also,
how are you feeling then? Yeah.
I have to point out that because we didn't talk about Audrey's point of view of that section.
Oh yeah, Audrey.
She fell. No. She was the one fall of the race.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
And she got back up and was like, I'm fine, and just kept going.
Oh, I had to. I was like, I can't be the one who has to like drop out right now. Like 5 miles into my section. I was being such a dork out there because I was so excited to be running. And I had my phone out and I was taking pictures and I was like, oh, it's non-technical. It's totally fine. Because I don't know, because I run on East Coast where like I have to watch where I'm stepping because of rocks and roots. But I was like, no, it'll be fine. It's all buttery smooth. And immediately I slip and I fall and I land like like my knee just hits a rock. So I kind of had to tough that one out.
Yeah. And then that night, as my mom's taking care of me, she's like, oh yeah, Audrey's knee is super swollen. And I was like, oh my God. We're all falling apart.
We got to the aid station and, we're refilling. I'm like grabbing some chips and stuff for Erin. And I looked down and like my leggings were like ripped right at the knee and I was bleeding. I was like, oh no, it's fine. It's not about me. It's not about me right now.
So then you still had to run almost 10 miles with your booped knee.
Yeah, it was fine.
We were mostly walking.
That's fair. What else, from your point of view, happened, Audrey, that Erin maybe forgot or has not brought up?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of that section was spent like, I kept on trying to be positive, like that the aid station was going to be here soon. Like, I feel like every time we turned a corner and saw like any sort of light, which 99% of the time was the headlight of somebody in front of us, but we're like, oh, is that the station? Oh, is that it? We're almost there. But after like doing that for 3 miles, it got a little challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really hard when they're not like that far off from where you think they are. Like a mile is one thing. Multiple, that's just cruel.
It really was.
And it was still dark at that point, right? Well, you were thinking you were going to approach.
It was dark, but it was getting like progressively lighter.
Yeah, that's.
I think by the time we got to the aid station, it was light.
Yeah.
How did you feel after the section, Audrey? Once you got to the aid station where you could stop and Erin had to keep going.
I don't know. I was still feeling pretty hyped up.
I believe it.
I don't know if it's just
she told me during that section that she wanted to sign up for 100 potentially. I was like, are you sure? Do you see this? And she's like, yeah, I think it might be fun. And I was like, okay.
I don't know. It was just, there's a lot of like really good vibes out at that race that weekend.
It is easy to get caught up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I was psyched to pass the torch to Rob. Yeah. Who was going out for the final stretch. And, knowing that there were only, was it 14 or 18?
14.
Yeah, there were only 14 left. And I was like, well, I can't go back to sleep now. And, but I did snooze in the back of the van for a little bit. So as soon as we passed Erin off to Rob, we hopped back in the van and drove out to the final aid station.
Mm-hmm. There's one in between. There's cow camp.
That was it.
Yeah.
So we got there a little bit early and just hung out. And I think it was only 5 miles from there. So at that point, I was like kind of running on fumes. And I was like, well, gotta make it to the last aid station.
Yeah. And at one of those aid stations, I think you had stopped running at that point, Audrey. We were texting. You were like, she's going to do it. And I was like, once I woke up in the morning, I saw you were at like 80 miles. I was like, she's going to do it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind she's made it this far, which is kind of funny because that is where you had your breakdown about wanting to drop.
Yeah. I do think by cow camp, Erin, you were in better spirits than you were when we saw you at the last aid station.
Yeah, definitely. So when Audrey and I were running into that aid station where I picked up Rob had, that aid station was weird. Like you had to run out from the road, like down this trail across a bridge, and there was the aid station, and then it went to another trail. And so Rob had come up to the road and met us there, and I was like, dang it, like I have to do this. Because he's here and he's waiting and he's ready, and like,
yeah,
okay, I guess we're doing this thing. And so him and I had done a 15-mile race together outside of Santa Fe back in May, just because he wanted to test himself and see how he would feel and if he could pace for this race. And he had leftover canned oxygen from that race that he brought, which came in clutch because my breakdown with Audrey was I couldn't breathe deep enough to take my inhaler. So I had like an entire can of oxygen and then I could actually take my inhaler. So something that I did not think I would ever need. But again, like Rob has paced a couple hundreds, like he's got that experience. So that came in very handy. And then he took a different tactic of he went in front. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't keep up. Like he's moving so fast. I'm so tired. And there's a picture of us at the first aid station together. And I just look like I'm in pain. Like my legs aren't even straight. I can't even stand upright. And I just look very uncomfortable. But he kept a pretty good pace going. And we had like a 700-foot climb pretty early on in our section. And it was on Forest Road. So it wasn't super duper pretty. And it felt like a never ending uphill. And then at that point, I hallucinated a 6-pack of beer next to one of the marking cones, which is weird because I really don't even drink. And it was like Coors Light, which gross.
How did you react to the imagined
like,
6? Were you excited or were you like?
I was confused. I'm like, is that there? There's no way that's there. Like, why would there be beer here? And then as we got closer, I was like, it's just a cone. There's not even like a rock next to it. It's literally just a cone. I don't know where that came from in my brain. Yeah. And then we had like a kind of flowy downhill section, which I actually ran, which felt really nice. And then we came into cow camp and yeah. I'm trying to think of like, I had also switched to only Morton gels at that point because I didn't want any flavor and I also didn't want to have to chew. So it's like
Morton's are good for that.
Yeah, I had every bag labeled with how many carbs I needed per bag, like per aid station.
Yeah.
So we could easily just like 1 for 1 switch things out, which was good. And at that point, I finally needed sunscreen because the first day of the race was like cloudy and misting all day. And I had sunscreen and bug spray in my backpack. So finally at cow camp, I was like, I need my sunscreen. Yes. There's sunshine. Which of course, I think that was the aid station. You guys didn't bring the backpack. You like just brought the food bag and cooler. So my mom sprinted back to the van to go get my sunscreen.
Yep.
And then the last 4 miles, we walked like a good section of it. And we had some really very, very pretty views. At one point, Rob asked me if I thought that my weight training helped with the uphills and just like keeping moving. Cause he's like, your like stride is very normal. Like you're not running a lot, but like your walking stride is a normal walk right now, which is crazy at like 90 something miles in. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it probably did. I think all the training helps in some way. And I would look at other people walking. I'm like, they definitely do seem like they're limping more than I am. And I felt pretty good moving still at the end. If it wasn't for my breathing, I think I would have run a lot more than I did. Like my legs still felt pretty strong until I tried to run on the track.
So, yeah, how was that?
We had to do it for the photo op.
So we came out of the woods. We had like this nice kind of rolling downhill. towards the end of the trail section, which was really pretty, really fun. And then we ran a little bit down the road and we got to Sisters Middle School, which is where the race ended. And you kind of run around the school, which was weird and hard to navigate because it was like you're running through the parking lot.
Oh, that's weird.
I was like, are you sure? Where do we go? And then we got to the track and I'm like, I'm at 100.25. Like the race should be over. Because I hit 100 on the trail and I was like, Rob, we're at 100. We can stop now, right? No. So we get to the track and I'm like, I'm going to run the lap on the track. And we started running and we almost got to the end of the long side. And I was like, I can't make it all the way to the finish line running. And I had told everybody at the last aid station, I said, I want everybody to run across the finish line with me. And Rob's wife, Mary Jo, was there. And I was like, she can take a picture at the finish line, but like everybody needs to run. Well, Kayleigh's boyfriend was like off at his car doing something. My mom's like, I want to take pictures. Dad told me I have to take pictures. I'm like, no, you have to run with me. Like, this is about me. Okay. I'm going to be selfish right now. And so everybody jogged with me a little bit. And when I say jog, I felt like I was full on sprinting and everybody was kind of just walking next to me, not running. And then we walked most of the track and then like the last 10 yards we ran. And honestly, my fondest memory of the finish line was I made a comment of like, man, the final countdown should be playing right now. And in unison, Kayleigh and Audrey start singing the final countdown to me as we're running around the track. And it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
Sounds amazing.
It was so good.
Yeah. Did you get emotional at the finish? Either of you?
I actually like held it together at the I think I was just so tired and so happy to be done. So we took pictures and stuff, and then my mom went back to the van to get my Crocs and took my backpack from me. Bless her soul, because that thing smelled horrible. But then Audrey and Kayleigh looked at me and they're like, you could cry if you need to. And then I started crying.
We're like, it's okay.
Darn it, guys. Just for like a second. But I was like, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah. 100 miles. Did you get emotional, Audrey?
I didn't cry, but I got a little misty. It was a really emotional moment. And we were all super proud.
I bet. It's so different seeing like someone you know. I know we've talked about this like in our Slack group, like watching documentaries of people you don't know finishing. A lot of us will cry. And then when it's like someone you do know, it's like that much stronger because you have that connection to them.
Oh, you just need, if you ever do 100, Audrey, epic. I will cry.
You need some epic music playing in the background and then everyone will cry. Okay, and then how did you feel after, Erin?
Oh, God. I had my first experience of like not wanting to eat after a race. That was new.
Not surprising.
So, yeah, I managed to walk back to the van by myself. It was a struggle, but we did it. Kayleigh took a video of it. And then probably halfway back to our rental house, which was only like a 20-minute drive, my legs started cramping. And I was like, oh, no, this is not good. And it was more of like an ache than a cramp, I'd say. So we get back to the house and I'm like, I can't get out of the van. And it was a 12-passenger transit van. So they're pretty high off the ground. And I ended up having to like push myself off the seat with my hands onto the floor of the van and then like scooch to the edge of the van. And my mom was like, I'll give you a piggyback ride. We're both going to end up in the hospital. I'm going to walk. It'll be okay. And so I can't remember if it was you or Kayleigh, Audrey, that helped. I think it was you helped get me into the house.
I think that was Kayleigh.
Was it? So I had my mom and then someone else on the other side of me like help lift me out of the van and get into the house. And there were 2 or 3 steps in.
Too many steps.
And then Audrey ran. 2 main steps. And then Audrey ran to the deck and got a plastic Adirondack chair that just barely fit in the shower so that I could sit.
Yeah, that was the mission at the time.
Yeah. And I sat in there for so long and then couldn't get myself back out. So basically for like 4 to 6 hours after the race, I could not walk without my mom helping me. Like she had to pick me up out of bed. She had to help me on and off the toilet, which was so fun as a 33-year-old woman. Be like, Mom, I'm ready to get up. Come help me.
More vulnerability.
Yeah. I also had the water in the shower turned all the way up and was still cold. And I was like, this is weird. Found out later it's because I had a fever. So I was like very achy, uncontrollably shaking, coughing up so much nasty stuff. Yeah, I just felt really sick. And I did the whole man cold moan and groan. And my mom rubbed my legs for probably like an hour afterwards. And then like came back and did it again when I woke up from my half-hour nap and was moaning and groaning again. I think I finished a race around 12:30. And then by like 6, so in the shower, I'd put on my bathing suit because I was like, I'm going directly to the hot tub. And then I finished my shower and I was like, I'm going to bed. I feel horrible.
Yeah.
So I was still like in my bathing suit. My mom's like, do you want PJs? I'm like, no, I don't want to move. But then we had dinner around like 6. And by then I could walk by myself. I could get up. We had a hot tub, so that was nice. And then that night, I slept okay. I slept better than I think I expected. And my mom did. I had a king size bed, and my mom was like, I am staying in here with you because if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't walk, like somebody needs to be here, which was nice. So, and then, yeah, we just stopped like every hour or 2 on the drive home because it's like a 6-hour drive, so that I could get out and hobble around so that I wouldn't cramp up.
Smart.
Yeah. And then I only took 2 days off of work. And I started a new job like right before this race. And so I went back to bedside nursing where I'm on my seat for 10 hours a day and wearing lead. So thankfully my preceptor would be like, you don't have to help clean this room. Just like go sit down, please. I need you to go sit, which was really nice. So yeah. Oh, it took 20, like almost 30 hours to get feeling back in my feet. So Monday, my mom and I just had we drove back and then we were laying on the couch watching movies. And all of a sudden I started like the moaning and groaning again. And she's like, what is wrong? And I was like, my feet, the feeling just came back and they really hurt. Like, oh my God, what is happening? And it took 2 weeks for them to like feel totally normal. They were like kind of numb and tingly for a couple weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the weirdest 100-miler side effect I've ever heard so far.
Yeah.
But I think it is impressive that you came out of it with like nothing really hurting, especially with your history of things hurting.
Yeah. And I never tripped or rolled an ankle the entire race, which is unheard of.
That's really impressive.
Because I literally fell this week.
Yeah, we don't gotta talk about that.
That's impressive. And it sounded like no GI issues, no trips, no falls.
No, like I could eat and drink the whole time. I didn't get any blisters. The only chafing I got was before mile, like it was the second aid station you guys were at. I can't remember what, maybe 37. My shirt had been pulled up weird by my backpack. And so my pack rubbed on my stomach. And that was the only chafing I had, which is just crazy to me.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had a pretty good race, all things considered, minus your breathing.
Yeah. It's like, man, if it wasn't for the breathing, like everything went as perfectly as you could ever want it to in a race. Like I've never heard of anyone not having GI issues or like severe blisters or like something. And
even like something minor in one of those categories.
And I
and
had
all
none
like
of
3
that.
weeks post-COVID.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It really is. And that definitely didn't help your breathing.
No, I actually forgot about, I don't know how I forgot this, but during the Kayleigh section, the really dark time was I had a super bad sore throat, like insanely bad sore throat. So when I picked up Audrey, I was like, Mom, do I have strep? Can you look at my throat? And she's like, I don't see anything. And I was like, it hurts so bad. And so we had texted, or Kayleigh texted the group chat and said, if you guys can find cough drops, it's like midnight. Sorry, but
your mom was on a mission to find cough drops, because at that point we were already parked at that aid station, which was like a significant distance away from civilization. And it was like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. No, maybe it's even closer to midnight. But I know she was having such a dilemma where like she didn't want to uproot us because we were like snoozing and like resting, and she had the van. So if she went, all of us had to go. So she was wrestling, but then she decided to just like walk around the aid station and ask any human being she could find if they had cough drops. And there were people who had them. I think there was one group who I think had like a few, maybe 2 or 3. And she was like, no, that's not enough. So she kept going. She kept asking. And then she found somebody who had like a handful to spare.
I ended up with like 20.
Wow.
Just a random assortment. But like that came in clutch because my throat was so sore. Yeah. Awful. So next time, if there is next time, cough drops are going to be on the list of necessary items.
We're really glad somebody else thought of that who was at that aid station.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so how are you feeling about 100 milers now that we are a month out? Because immediately after you finished, you said, I will never do this again.
Yeah, I made everybody promise to never let me do it again.
I think at the end of our section, you said, I'm finishing this so I never have to do this ever again.
I do recall
that was your motivation.
That
was like what you told us. You're like, it's not like I'm going to do it to run 100s. I'm doing it so I can cross it off the list forever.
Yeah. And then we got back to the house and I was like, Audrey, you have one job left as a pacer. Don't let me do this ever again. And then a week later, I was like, I might do another. So a month out, part of me is still curious, like if I hadn't had COVID, if it hadn't been like cold and dusty and kind of higher altitude, how would I have done? And then the other part of me is like, okay, it's been a month and I am still not 100% back to normal activity. And that's really hard as somebody that likes being out in the mountains all the time, just like not being able to do what I want to do because my body is still recovering and I'm still exhausted all the time. I took a 3-hour nap today. Nice. So, yeah, as much as I kind of want to try again, part of me is like, is it worth losing like a whole month afterwards? Whereas with like a 50 miler, you lose maybe a week. So I don't know, probably not next year. We'll see. The other thing that I've thought about a lot is I've had a couple people be like, oh my God, you ran 100. That's so cool. I want to do that one day. I'm like, just make sure that you really want to do it. Like, it's not something you should do just to do it or just to say you did it. Like, the amount of hours that you spend training, the things that you give up for the training, like the race itself is really hard. And if you're not in it, it's not going to go well. And then the part that people don't talk about, like how long it takes to actually recover afterwards. It's a long time. And I'm still glad I did it. I just don't know that I want to go through this long recovery again.
Yeah. Yeah. And just adding on to what you're talking about, like the time it takes to train and sacrifice and everything, even like the time you're not physically running or lifting, whatever. Like, I know that you did a lot of like meal prep so you make sure you're eating enough during the day at work, and like so you'll have meals when you get home and you don't want to cook, and just like planning all that out, and then like doing yoga to make sure that when it helps your sleep and that you stay like looser, all of that stuff. Like there's so much more that goes into it than just like the time you spend running, which is a lot for 100 to begin with. So it's it's a big commitment if you do want to do it.
Yeah. And I think like one of the craziest weekends was my best friend was having her family barbecue and they had invited me, and it was like a 2-hour drive away at her parents' house. I'm like, well, I have a 5-hour run and I need to do that. And so I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning and I started my run at 4 a.m. so that I was done by 9 and could go to this family picnic and just, do it, making sacrifices like that of trying to keep a social life, but then still fit in training wherever. So yeah, it's a lot. But it was fun. And it also showed me that running long distances is 100% a team sport. Like I still get teary-eyed thinking about my crew and pacers because I literally would not have finished that race without you guys. Like there's just no way without the people I had. So that was huge.
Yeah. And Audrey, how are you feeling about 100-miler?
I'm not rushing to sign up for one. I'm still processing everything I witnessed.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I have a lot of respect for the distance. And especially having seen everything that goes into it and all the sacrifice and ups and downs. But it did inspire me to sign up for my first 100K.
Yeah.
In the spring. So we'll see what happens with that. So
I'm pretty nervous for that one.
Yeah, same.
Big one.
At least you'll be together.
It's true.
I know. Kayleigh
you
and
have
Audrey.
A built-in pacer. Yeah, you have built-in pacers for the entire race. Unless one of you is like, screw you guys, I'm going to go faster.
That'll be Kayleigh, if anybody.
But that'll be so fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I just love that, like, specifically in the trail running community, like you can just meet random people and then introduce them to other people you know, and then everybody's just immediately friends.
Yeah, and it makes planning races a lot more fun.
Yeah, it does.
Definitely.
I know. We have to figure out your asthma situation, Erin, so that I can convince both of you to come to Colorado for a race.
I think the key is like just take my inhaler before I start and stop being stubborn. I think I haven't gotten over the woman at the starting line of one of my cold, rainy races telling me that I was cheating because asthmatics allegedly use oxygen more efficiently than the general population, which for anyone not in healthcare, that is not accurate at all.
She is misinformed.
Yes.
My guess is that because like, what's it? Albuterol, is that what is in your inhaler?
Yeah.
Is that the right? Yeah. So that's like, you need a TEU for it. Is it therapeutic exempt use? Basically, you need like approval to use it in races, and she probably like heard of that and was like, "Oh, you're using it to get an advantage." It's like, no,
performance enhancer.
I literally need
trying
this
to
breathe. Yeah. It's like, you know how you breathe on a daily basis? I'm just trying to get there.
Yeah. I just want to be at a normal, like semi-normal level.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there have been people who have like abused that at some point in time, but like not
for sure.
asthmatics.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wrap this up. I said we weren't going to go super long, but hard not to.
Kept it
we'll
under
wrap this
90
up.
minutes.
I know. I'm proud of us. We'll do one final question for each of you. What was your biggest takeaway from the experience? Erin, we'll start with you.
Oh gosh.
I know, putting you on the spot.
Can I have two?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, number one, I kind of already said, which is that like long distance running is such a team sport. And if you don't have people around you supporting it, it is such a different beast. And like making sure that you pick the right people to surround yourself with is so important. And I could not have asked for better people. It was amazing. So that's takeaway number one. And then number two, which I find in every ultra, is just like we're capable of so much more than we realize. Like my longest run was 26 miles this year prior to the 100. And I just had to like blindly trust Kayleigh that she's leading me right down the right path, which she always has, but it's still nerve-wracking to be like, what do you mean I'm going to run 4 times that? but just trusting the process, and it worked out, and my body was able to push and my brain was able to push. And
yeah. And to be fair, you have run 50 miles before, so you have that experience in your back pocket. But yeah, this year it was, I guess we had like your volume a little more spread out.
Yeah, because I don't know how to not compete in ultras. And so I didn't want to run an ultra this year and get hurt and then not be able to run my 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Audrey, what about you?
I think my takeaway was just how special the ultra and trail running community is as a whole. Because on one hand, it's like how we all met each other, and it shows that you can make friends with people across the country, and this can be the common ground to just fly out and meet somebody for the first time and have this amazing experience at a 100. But also every experience I had at all of the aid stations with anybody who was connected to the race at all was positive. Whether it was strangers who were giving out cough drops or volunteers at aid stations or other crew members. It was just a really supportive and amazing atmosphere. So that was my takeaway, being out there.
Yeah.
The community, both small and large.
Great takeaways. But yeah, if people want to follow along with either of your journeys, where can they do that? Erin, we'll start with you again.
So Instagram's probably the easiest. I think my handle is Erin ME91.
Yeah,
I believe.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. And I always just give people the disclaimer of like, if I see that you follow Kayleigh, I'll accept it, but all of my stuff is private. So if you don't follow Kayleigh, I'm not going to accept it. So follow Kayleigh too.
That's fair. And Audrey, where can people find you?
That's a good caveat. I'm also on Instagram at Audrey's Crumbs. Also private, but if you follow Kayleigh and our cool trail runner or just person who's interested in this stuff, we can be friends.
Are your Stravas private?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to look them up on Strava, you can try. But mine's private too. So
I'll look at who you are and make a decision.
Yeah.
It's primarily like I don't want people that live in my area that I don't really know knowing where I go every day.
My Strava rule is if we have mutuals and you're a woman, I'll probably let you follow me. If you're a man and I don't have any information about you, no way.
Yeah, that's reasonable, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, we are right about at 90 minutes. That's kind of impressive. But thank you both for coming on and sharing your experience, your perspectives. And I'm thinking that people will really like this episode. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Kayleigh.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was fun.